So tonight's, thank you for coming to dinner discussion tonight at Nirvana Strength. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ian. I'm one of the co-founders here. And tonight's discussion is going to be with this guy right here, Dominic Rapson. And he's going to break down the carnivore diet and take any questions that anybody might have. And the whole discussion is going to be just focused on that basic topic. Yao, you want to go first? Okay.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm Yao Yao. I'm very interesting about the topic we're talking on tonight. So yeah, let's read on my hair. Also, I really like these two peoples.
So yeah, I'm Nico. I used to be a pro fighter, so I was always busy with my foods. First weighing everything down, then started to fast, and now the carnivore sounds very interesting. So.
Yeah, what's up? My name is Aaron Darko, and I've met Dominic last year in Bali for the first time, and then I went and saw him and Nettie down in Brighton in England earlier this year, and basically through knowing Nettie and Dominic, I'm already a health coach myself, but it's like I was basically, I mean, how do you say it, like the rabbit hole of health goes deep, right? So I realized that, you know, red meat, for example, there's so many myths around like cholesterol and saturated fat, and basically I wasn't eating a lot of red meat up until I met Dominic and Nettie, and then I realized that, you know, I should be eating more of it. Even though I'm a health coach and I teach people how to, you know, how to write nutrition for them and stuff, it's like there's always more to learn, and that's what I really noticed. And I started eating more red meat, and then I started having more quote unquote powers, right? Like testosterone went up and energy.
Dog, yeah.
Huh?
Intro.
Oh, yeah. So I'm here to just soak up the knowledge and just geek out on nutrition.
Alright, yeah, well, my name is Chris Blakesley, and Aaron took up all my time. So, but actually, no, I'm very interested in this from the standpoint of is it even possible? Because I eat a lot of meat, but I just love salads and love veggies, and I can't imagine living without those. But I'm open to suggestions. So.
I'm Joachim, or Jack for the homies. I've been carnivore for 9 months and seem to be pretty healthy, so I got it.
I'm a coach. I've done some workshops here. We'll be doing more in the future. I did the last practitioners panel on teaching methodology. So yeah, if you want to get to know me, let's have a chat.
So, my name's Antoinette. I'm a previous vegetable and salad lover, as we all may be, from a bodybuilder diet, chicken and rice, now carnivore for about a year and 7 months. 9 months, so 1 year and 9 months.
It's just as bad if the relationship numbers.
Oh yeah.
Together for like 2 weeks, mate. Calm down. Hey everyone, Tara. I'm actually transitioning to carnivore. Still thinking about it. I'm on my way there. Start eating fish again. I was vegan for about 3 years and a half. Feel good so far. Just want to have more insight of like the journey getting there, and I want
2 years pescatarian for 3. The transition was difficult, and it's been about a month now, and I intermittently fast 20 hours, so it's been really good. I really like it. I feel like my body really needed like that reset. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear more.
yeah, I'm addicted to salad.
So I've been going through the carnivore protocol for about 3 weeks now, maybe three weeks and a bit, coming up to a month next week, and it's been great. There has been ups and downs, and you know, I think the body's adjusting. It's been very interesting, but
I still eat everything.
He's very interested on learning about other ways of eating and hoping to hear some good insights about it.
So yeah, you can call me Origins. Origins of Vitality.
Sono italiano e anch'io mangio.
Origins of where vitality comes from, what makes the human a robust animal is what I'm in search of, and that's all I'm in search of. I don't care whether that's eating whatever. I just want to find the truth as to what makes us physically the best for the longest possible time. So some may say dying young, but as late as possible is the mission. So I've been through a journey of many different nutritional paths. Some just purely because of dogma and things I got into, some purely because of inquisitiveness and searching for that truth led me to having to experience the truth before I became a nutritionist and started diving into the science. So I'd been vegan for 2 years. I'd been pescatarian for almost a year, and transitioning through to vegetarian for quite a few months as well. Although when I was becoming vegetarian, I already had the mindset to go into veganism. That was the path I was choosing to follow already. At this time, I was going through what some may call a spiritual transformation, what I call now a new age spiritualist idea of being human and connected to source. So from that, it led me further into veganism, and I quickly found out through different symptoms and issues in my body that at the time I didn't know the science behind them. I just knew they didn't feel right. But also with that, I was doing bodybuilding. So I came from a bodybuilding background where I was even on steroids at a certain point, and I was eating 6 to 8 times a day, chicken rice, broccoli, tilapia rice, broccoli, chicken rice, broccoli, and then needle in the ass, chicken rice, broccoli, needle in the ass. It was amazing strength. I mean, I was deadlifting sometimes twice in one day for a session and not feeling any soreness. But after coming off of that system, my body started to fall apart very quickly because that steroid was gone. That main part of the meal plan was gone. So then I realized, oh, this isn't natural, this isn't good. I also had an array of symptoms and issues that at the time I thought it was normal because it's all I knew. All the bodybuilders and everything around that time were also going through the same, and they were just grinding through it. It's just what we knew. So I became a nutritionist at that time and a personal trainer. I just did your typical nutritional studies, where I did a 6-month course, NASM, CPT, all of that stuff. And it was all macro based, and pretty much if it fits your macros, eat it, destroy it, get back in the gym and carry on. When it came time to look like you were ready for summer, it was diet down, feel really shit, but you look damn hot. And that was about it. Then when it came to getting ready for a comp, it was bulking up, getting really fat, not liking yourself, not looking at any mirrors, covering all the mirrors in your house, and feeling really strong though. But my skin, I have tremendously sensitive skin, so that was something I'd always been aware of, my appearance. So I was always conscious of that. I had terrible skin from that. I had terrible pain in my joints, and I just felt sluggish all the time, and I only felt happy and good when I ate. I'm sure a lot of you could relate to that at some point in your life as well. So, coming out of veganism is where I may lead this chapter on to, and we can start getting into the carnivore. So coming out of veganism is when I decided to pick up back hunting. So I'd always been hunting, I'd always been eating animal foods before that, I'd always been getting my own food. I was living in the Caribbean, so I had the opportunity to get my own food. It was great. I didn't have to pay for anything. I was pretty much a certified beach bum. But so I picked up hunting again after veganism, after realizing that I had lost a load of muscle tissue. I could no longer keep the shredded aesthetics that I wanted. Hormonally, I was imbalanced as well. I did not feel like a man. I also had even worse skin, and my digestive issues were the most prominent thing that led me to decide, wow, something's not right here. This is not perhaps this is not a species appropriate diet for the human animal. So from that point, I brought back all my guns, went back spearfishing a lot, started eating fish. Oh, suddenly my energy in the gym was back. Oh, suddenly my stamina to swim 8 to 9 hours in one hunting journey was back. So I was like, okay, this is the right direction. Now, mentally, and I'm sure, like Tara as well, maybe you as well, mentally the decision to eat a large ruminant animal was pretty tough after everything I'd learned spiritually with all of the yoga I was going through and all of the friends I was revolved with. They were just heavily against it. They were like, how can you eat a diet that harms so many living creatures? So I was still caught up in that. And it took not only spearfishing to make me appreciate an animal's life, not also hunting boars and things like that, to appreciate where the food comes from and the pain that not only you go through but the animal goes through, because as the hunter you go through a lot of pain as well. I mean, it's a lot of effort. It's not as easy as going to the supermarket and picking out your meat. You're hiking, you're sore, you're tired, you're dehydrated. It's just as much pain. But of course you're taking the life at the end of the day. And how do you... I'll take your lives as well. Yeah. Spit roast. Yeah. Okay, clearly they're not happy about it. Maybe that bull was their friend. But from that point on, it took me a while to transition back to eating red meat. Cut the long story short on that bit, I finally went back to eating ruminant animals, which I'll get into the science of ruminant animals as well, which was a cow. And suddenly the hormonal differences in my body were tremendous within the first few days. Okay, I had regular, I'm sorry to bring it here, but regular morning erections. I felt strong and everything. Testimonies anyway, but yeah, like the differences there hormonally as a man was tremendous within the first few days, and that's what led me to think, okay, there's something to this. I need to start incorporating it more. It opened up my mind and it told me to stop thinking about the suffering and all of that. And this was way before I then got into ketogenic diets, and this is way before carnivore. This was just eating a mixed diet. So I was still eating a burger with the bun and the lettuce and the tomatoes like yourself, you know, just everything. You don't eat the bun? Oh, okay. Then I went full in bun everything. I didn't care anymore. I was like, as long as I'm eating red meat at least once a day, shit's going right, shit's standing up. So I'm like, cool. But then there were still certain issues. I mean, at that point, I wanted to dive deeper into science because I understood something was working, but I didn't get to the bottom of why it was working. And that's where everything changed for me. I did another nutrition course. I also studied with the Czech holistic system. I became a holistic lifestyle coach in all of his systems. And it taught me to read into a lot more. So metabolic typing, blood typing, biodiversity of the gut, and every human being being different on the inside. One man's food is another man's poison. That's the direction it started me in. And I thought that was very accurate. Going down that path, I then started Origins of Vitality. And before I started working with clients as Origins of Vitality, I decided to travel and get first-hand experience with different tribes eating in different ways to see how it affected my body, and also it was a cool experience. Due to my mother, she's a brilliant woman, pain in the ass, but man, she really helped me with travel. We were traveling since a young age. I was traveling to third world countries from a very young age, and I developed a lot of friends in different communities from a very young age, which at a later point in time allowed me to recontact them and go directly to the tribes they knew and spend time with them. So one of the most, I'll just list like one of them because there's quite a few. I spent time with the Bedouin Tribes in the desert, and it was remarkable to spend time in the desert doing something I didn't think was possible for the human body, which is to go 6 days without any water or food. So we did a traditional Bedouin dry fast in the border of Egypt, and how can I forget this place now as well? So it's far past the Sinai Mountains. I can't remember the exact village right now, but it's up near the mountains in the middle of the desert, and the temperatures reached about 40 degrees each day. These people only had camels, goats, and the odd bit of flatbread to live off, which was a very small percentage. I chose not to have the flatbread because while I was there the first few days preparing for the fast, it irritated my stomach really badly. They obviously seemed to deal with it okay. They've been brought up, they've lived with it. These are specifics that we can get into how these things work later on in this conversation. But majority of this diet was dairy and meat. They had goat's milk, camel milk, goat's yogurt, and camel yogurt, and the meat of those animals. So we did a 6-day dry fast in the desert in which, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was freaking horrible the first few days. I was hallucinating, I felt extremely weak, I couldn't sleep properly at night, which was incredible because you just had a sky of stars. One of the most beautiful places I've ever visited in my life, and you watched the sunrise, it was incredible. But these people were extremely hardy. I mean, they were doing their dry fast, but still walking their animals, still tending to their animals, still sewing their houses and putting up their tents and making their fires. Like, it didn't even bother them. It was only up until the end of the fourth day that I started to feel pretty decent. My body was glowing. I felt so strong. I felt incredible. Now, on the sixth day, we broke the fast. Drinking water felt like drinking acid. It was a crazy experience, but I didn't die. Here I am. I felt so clean and amazing, and I had bowel movements up until the fourth day. After that, I didn't have a bowel movement for up to 2 weeks. It's like everything from my body had left the body. And then it took a long time for crap to accumulate again, which was a crazy experience, and taught me about fasting, autophagy, and how we are built to fast, how we are not animals that are meant to ruminate all day, eating 6 to 8 times a day. And that's a fear I had going into this dry fast. I was like, well, I thought that if you don't eat this much, you won't be able to keep your muscle, you won't be able to keep your energy, you'll starve your brain will start to atrophy. Nope. Energy levels are better than before. Muscle mass was still there. I felt very clean. So that started my journey into fasting and intermittent fasting. From then on, I also did Ayurvedic studies with the Bushmen in the Caribbean jungles, which taught me about different herbal principles. But one thing I noticed from them was that they were all very fragile and still very prone to infection, which to me was strange. Okay, so you live purely from plant matter and from the earth, and you're meant to say that this is to create more energy and direct energy from the sunlight, but yet you have less vitality and your body's extremely frail. I also met breatharians at that time who unfortunately have passed away. They didn't last more than a year. So it completely destroyed a lot of those ideas I had on maybe energy of the body, and how maybe we do have to function in nature as we always have functioned for the last 2.5 million years. From that point, I got into ketogenics, and this is where I really started to practice as origins of vitality, where luckily for me, my first client, and well, you can say this is lucky or not, but my first client stepping into ketogenics and studying fasting, autophagy, ketone bodies, and high fat consumption was with a testicular cancer patient, stage 3. That was my first trusting client as I designed my logo, made my business, and stepped forth into the nutrition realm as I consider a proper nutritionist and holistic therapist. And he was given only half a year to live with his condition. He's sailing around the world right now. So I'm safe to say that the protocols that I trusted in and that I learned from my tribal experiences and the science that I understood worked. Was I scared shitless about his trust in me? Yes, I think he's still a freaking crazy idiot for trusting in a 24-year-old dude who's just come out of tribal studies and just come back to England, back to civilization. But he did. So from that point on, I was working ketogenics for quite some time. What's the step up from keto? Does everybody know what ketogenics is anyway? Yeah? Everyone has a broad idea of ketone bodies? Yeah? Okay, good. So from that point on, the next step up was carnivore. That was the only thing I could go further into after ketone, low carbohydrates, high fat. I mean, if you looked at some of the meals Antoinette and I ate, it was really pretty. It was like Instagram perfect. Little bit of meat, loads of little greens, different things like that. No potatoes, no starches or anything like that. And we thought that was extremely healthy. We felt good, although we still felt like the urge for cravings for like sweet foods and snacking on things was still there. And we were still eating a lot more than we had to. Although we were fasting 16 to 18 hours a day, coming to the end of the fast, you were pretty pissed off, moody. And we were like, okay, so this isn't quite optimal. I'd been looking up carnivore for about a year, and before it was called carnivore, just ancestral diet is what I like to call it, based on the tribes I had seen, and also looking at Wilhelm, who was an Arctic explorer. He wrote the book Not by Bread Alone, and he explored the Arctic region where he was coming into contact with tribes that only ate meat, rotten, frozen, only meat, no salt, anything like that. And I thought, okay, maybe it's genetic, because I still had metabolic typing in my mind. I was like, maybe it's genetic and maybe it's geographical circumstances, which is why they can deal with it. So I didn't trust it. I was like, there's no freaking way that we can just survive off of meat. What about the vitamins, the minerals? And I'm sure some of you are going to have questions like this as well, which we'll cover. And then Antoinette, who trusted in my protocols from the beginning with the ketogenics, we reversed 3 of her chronic issues and 1 very, not chronic, degenerative issue. She was, I'm sorry to say it in front of everyone, but she was infertile at one point with endometriosis, had severe eczema and other issues, and we reversed that in 3 months with ketogenics. And so she immediately trusted me, and the relationship was off to a good start, some may say. And she came up to me a year and 9 months ago and was like, Dom, you've got to listen to this podcast. Check this hench 52-year-old who just eats meat, and he's done a podcast with Joe Rogan. And I was like, okay, cool, let's watch it. We watched it together. And the dude, I mean, he's great. Not going to mock Lord Sean Baker. He's done a lot of good work for the meat-only community and showing and dismissing a lot of the myths around being carnivore and such. He's done a lot of good work, but he's never really gone deep into the science of it. So from that, we were like, okay, we looked at each other and we're like, we start today. Without knowing even the science of it, we were like, okay. I then spent 3 months testing it out, going deep into the science of it, just going through all of the chemical structures of meat, all of the chemical structures of plant materials, and all of the chemical structures that are that our organs release. And from that point, I was sold. Within 3 months, I then decided to make performance protocols, which I then tested by doing the deadlift and a few other performance maneuvers in calisthenics, which within another 3 months, coming up to 6 months carnivore, I had managed to increase my strength by 25% without changing anything. Without changing the frequency, the volume, the amount of training. My deadlift, I was training once every 2 weeks, and I was just picking up as heavy as I could without a warm-up. Yeah. So once every 2 weeks, I would just pick up the heaviest weight I could think of on the day, and if it picked up, I would go to the next weight and pick it up with no warm-up or training for this. Within the 3 months, I went from 190 kilo deadlift to 250 kilo deadlifts while increasing 6 kilos of muscle and dropping to 5% body fat. That's something the fitness industry would say is outrageous and impossible. Now, that's a brief journey of where I've been, why I've done what I've done, and why I'm still carnivore now. Is there any questions so far that we can start to build upon from what I've just said? Because if not, I'll be talking for hours on end.
How to transition?
The transitioning, okay. So, depending if you haven't got any permanent damage, well, we say permanent allopathically. I say that also because I don't want to get sued or anything like that. But depending on the current state of your body's hormones and your intestines, it's pretty safe to dive right in to a high consumption of meat. Now, I suggest ketogenic entry always first, because this allows the body to utilize fat stores and to change hormonally the pathways of energy to the brain. So it's pretty safe. I wouldn't say worry about it. Now, 95 to 98%, studies always fluctuate now. They like to say 95, then somebody goes, oh, it's 98. So let's just say 95, 98% of the population have a gut dysbiosis, a parasitic infection, and a permeable gut. So dependent on how you react during carnivore depends at the rate that you can jump into it, how cold turkey you can go, and also any modifications you may need to do, which maybe you need to solidify the lining of your intestines, or you need to help your liver and stomach come back to optimal levels of digestion strength. So these are things that are key plays into adapting into carnivore, and it's what I take into account first.
95 to 98% have all 3 of those conditions, or,
Yeah.
or one of those 3?
All 3 follow each other.
Oh.
Yeah.
The Bedouin tribe, what was their life expectancy? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know off by heart by now, but the eldest member of the tribe was above 80. Yeah, although their living conditions are pretty harsh, and they're not the most physically robust people as well. They all have lean tissue mass, but not the lean tissue mass that modernly will give us the longevity that we correlate with. But I'm assuming from what I remember, they all live past 80 quite comfortably, free of many of our modern diseases. Yeah.
Have you ever checked in with a cardiologist, done blood work on your lipids? Have you ever looked at that angle of it?
I did near the beginning, especially through ketogenics. It's something that I was very cautious of, and everything was extremely balanced. My cholesterol was extremely high. It's probably even higher now, and my testosterone is very high. Now, I do explain to most people that the allopathic method of screening for cholesterol issues is very backwards. There's a certain way, which I've put in my book actually, it's quite hard for me to describe right now without the numbers, but there's a certain way where you want to divide your low density lipoproteins by your triglycerides in order to get the the calcification arterial score of your pulmonary system. And that's the best way to evaluate whether you are at risk or not just going by cholesterol, because they say good and bad cholesterol, right? In our sense, there's excellent cholesterol and good cholesterol. There's no good and bad. They both serve an extremely valuable purpose, which leads me to say your LDL is extremely valuable. That's the one that they say is bad. So HDL is what carries all of the intracellular activity you need in order to build muscle, fuel the brain, and also drive nutrients and minerals that you're eating into your muscle tissue and organs. Now, LDL, if your LDL is low, and that's why we see people with statin drugs or low LDL are more prone to heart disease and heart attacks and stroke, which is why vegetarians and vegans long term tend to develop that, unfortunately. Now, not all, but a huge majority we're seeing. But the LDL is what goes further intracellularly and removes all of the waste product of the exchange by mitochondria for that energy and receivement of all of those nutrients. So that's why if you look at, I just looked at Johnson's last score that he had in Malaysia, and his LDL was through the roof, and his HDL was maybe about 100 lower. It was very well in balance, but his free-flowing triglycerides was extremely low. And it's the free-flowing triglycerides that can get caught up in your systems and then allow the other cholesterol to stick to the walls and develop a problem. And to develop high triglycerides, you need a mixture of a lot of carbohydrates and sugar consumption, which is driving inflammation, because LDL and triglycerides are what comes in to reduce that inflammation. So somebody that's got high inflammation in their body will have high triglycerides and LDL as an emergency. And that's why doctors will go, oh my God, you have high this. But rather than treating the inflammation, they treat the high LDL, rather than removing the inflammation, which then relaxes the amount of cholesterol being used to try and take away that inflammation.
Have you done a calcium score? Do they do the
No, I haven't gone that far. No.
type thing with the
Yeah. I haven't gone that far. I haven't felt the need actually, and I haven't done any further blood tests because this is something I try and teach people now with the programs. It's an intuitive journey. The body gives signs years in advance before a major attack or chronic or degenerative issue happens in the body. And this is why I try and get people to understand and learn. It's like for hypothyroidism or hypo, it's the thyroid isn't actually the problem. The thyroid is a blinker for a much chronic issue of adrenal fatigue that's happening in the body. And these are things that people need to learn.
You also have other silence problems like the osteoporosis and that.
Yeah.
Which is, to be fair, it's one of the biggest worries that I have when it comes to carnivore. It's that if you are to be pulling calcium out of the bones, to be balancing out your pH, for example, you won't actually have any signs until it's too late and you get a fracture. Similar to what happens with postmenopausal women.
Yeah.
So that's kind of going back to what you were saying. I think if you are not having any symptoms, I think it would still be worth for you to know exactly what your insides are like, because you are doing something that it's still experimental in a way.
See, this is where I disagree with experimental, because bringing back to the point of the osteoclerosis as well, when you don't disturb the balance of vitamin C, and we know that vitamin C is what helps move calcium, yeah? So if you're not disturbing your vitamin D and vitamin C, So, but I want to bring the point from vitamin C first, sorry. So, this is where it comes into play. A lot of people, when you look up meat, and this is going to go into a broader point, and it's going to link back to the osteochlorosis. With the vitamin C levels, a lot of people you will look up and you will see that red meat has no vitamin C value. But actually there's about 10 milligrams in muscle meat in a pound, okay? And liver, even far more, but that's a different subject as well. Now, vitamin C, how much you intake and how much you don't disturb from the body is a very important thing to understand. It's a very important chemical pathway because vitamin C, and once you intake a lot of glucose with vitamin C, that's why most plant matter or fruits that you're intaking, you're not really getting much of the vitamin C from that. It's actually going to be won over by glucose. Now, with vitamin C, your whole internal function of immune system and your disposition of your bone and your bone marrow comes into play. If you are not disturbing that play, you're generally not going to be detracting a lot from your marrow. Now we see from carnivore and eating a lot of meat that you fill up that marrow very quickly and you fill it up with a lot of vitamin C as well. Now they say you supposedly don't store a lot of vitamin C, but there is quite a bit of those stores there, especially if you're not disturbing your stores with the glucose as I mentioned. Now with the fact with the vitamin D as well, regardless of sunlight or not, you're getting vitamin D from this diet as well, from the way you're eating. Now, if you're getting the adequate vitamin C, the adequate marrow stores, are you going to suck from your own bones if you're constantly fulfilling it?
You still would if your pH levels are high. Because
So-
calcium, it's your electrolytes that will be balancing those levels.
So which pH are you talking about? The pH that goes past the stomach?
Blood pH.
The blood pH is affected by breathing and not food. Your pH changes from the stomach. So I'm trying to understand. I understand about pH in the stomach, but pH mechanisms of blood has nothing to do with calcium, vitamin C, and vitamin D moving across and how you fill it up consistently. So I like
but
to
that's
if you
part
could
of the mechanism. That's part of how you will balance those levels, regardless of the food.
But the food doesn't alter the pH of the blood. Or do you disagree completely? Let me know, elaborate. Let's go. This is where it gets interesting.
No. I'm just really curious about the long-term changes.
The long-term changes. So, okay, I'll try and, I think I know what you're getting at. Okay, so I'll try and answer this one now a little bit differently. So let's look at the last 2.5 million years. Hey, welcome. How you doing? The last 2.5 million years, we've been mostly on just the meat diet with the odd bit of glucose from very low glucose berries and fruits that were, depending on where you were as a developing humanoid at the time, geographical circumstances, but predominantly meat-based. And at first we were scavengers, which is why we have a trace of a 1.5 pH stomach. It traces back to when we were scavengers, because we were the most inferior animal on the plane of the planet Earth at the time. We couldn't hunt, we couldn't really defend ourselves, we were pretty useless. We only really became upright because it conserved energy and allowed us to mate more, which is why we bred in huger numbers. That's about all we had. We still had fur, we couldn't do anything. Now, there was a few different versions of us. Sorry, this is going to get quite long, but I'm going to get back to your point. Trust me, it's going round. It's going to get round there. Yeah. So we still had fur on our bodies, and there was a few different humanoids. Only one survived to become us. So the ones that died out were largely vegetarian. Yeah, what's that?
Why only one?
Why only one? I'm going to get to that. So,
well, it's like the sperm, right? There's only one sperm that makes it to the end. Why only one?
Why
No,
only
because
one?
there are many kind of humanoid on
Yeah,
the
there was
planet,
many.
but only one became us.
Only one was victorious.
And
And look what it's become.
That, was,
It was free, yeah.
In Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and the more ape-like one, yeah. And basically,
we have some DNA. I don't. But some of us
some people have traced Neanderthal DNAs, yeah.
I'm already checked
I think
mine
he
out.
does, because the way he goes about things. But all right. Yeah, lad, yeah. So basically, some of those died out because geographical circumstances changed, the climate changed. Global warming is a real thing. It's just a natural occurring phenomenon. The planet cools and heats up through different many different phases. Carbon dioxide rises and lowers through many different phases. Plants thrive when the carbon dioxide is highest. Most animals don't. At a certain time, the carbon dioxide wasn't low, but the climate was still becoming increasingly hot. A lot of the vegetation dried up. Many animals that could not turn to eating meat or traveling the distances and cooling their bodies down died out. Now, the ones that survived to make us, they started as scavengers. Not saying that it was as easy as they just picked up meat and there we go, they became us. There was a big amount of time in between, and I mean thousands of years, where they were still struggling to adapt to meat. And because they still had not the intelligence and the brain size that we have now, they didn't really have many tools or ways of going about it. So what happened was, they would wait for the larger predatory animals to be finished with their meals. Then we would run in like cockroaches and take the marrow and everything that was left and run back to the safety of the trees or whatever was left at the time. It was actually the hills. From that point, the marrow, which is extremely valuable, as I said, it carries a lot of the fat and I always mess up this word, docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, a lot of what our brain, our cortexes, our eyes, our heart's made out of, DHA, is what then started to grow our brains and then started to increase our limb function. And it's what started tool development, which we're seeing in apes now, as apes are starting to eat more meat and hunt in the wild of our jungles currently now. We're seeing them fish, we're seeing them hunt deer and things like that. We're seeing them start to use stones to crack open marrow and kill other animals. This is what we started doing. So now, not only could we throw rocks at the bigger cats and everything's there, and we could break into the bone better and get more marrow, it fueled even more growth of the brain. From that point, we started becoming more hairless. We started traveling further distance. We were now able to regulate our temperature through our pores. This was game-changing in hunting and tracking the animals down. From then, the Stone Age, we started to make arrows, we started to make sharp objects, we started to hunt. It wasn't up until now, I always used to say 12,000 years ago, but I forget that it's moved now. So it's 14,000 years ago, roughly, that the agrarian revolution started. All up until that time, we were getting our vitamin C, our vitamin D, well, obviously from the sun as well. Yeah,
Biggest source.
Biggest source. Definitely, we are creatures of light. So, yeah, we are creatures of light. So sunlight is a very big holistic factor. I'm sure you take into play as well. Very important. And from that point, that's all we've been having. Okay, the odd berries. Now I'm going to get into the fruits now. So 14,000 years ago, we started the agrarian revolution. Since the agrarian revolution, we've only seen a decline in physical robustness, pain tolerance, brain size,
And health in general.
and health in general, I guess. Yeah, because we started living in bigger communities and we started to farm. Now, we used our intellect instead of figuring out more ways of farming animals to hybridize vegetables and fruit. All of the fruits and vegetables that you find in the supermarket, barring maybe one or two, are not found in nature. You would never go hunting and forage them. You would never find them. You even look in the differences in wild mushrooms compared to the mushrooms you find in supermarkets now. It's a huge difference, not only in nutritional content, but in the family of species that they're in. So we hybridize these things from the mustard plant. And we crossbred them to make them more palatable, grow faster, and to be sweet enough to our taste buds. And then obviously modern industry and agriculture further made them more sweet and bigger, juicier, more appetizing to our eye. They played on the small receptors for glucose that we had, which just meant safety in the wild and a little source of energy, to being the most valuable things on our plate. Which leads me now back to the osteochlorosis question. Why now, with the involvement of these foods, would it mean that we would be more balanced or imbalanced in that blood pH or consistent refilling of our marrow stores? This is a question that comes up a lot, and the problem is with the carnivore diet, I'm sure you agree, is that there's no modern clinical trial of it, apart from two scientists in the 1920s, I'm not sure if you saw that one as well.
No.
In the 1920s, they locked themselves up in a hospital for an entire year, where they were followed by doctors. Even when they went to the toilet, there was a doctor overlooking. Well, that pee looks decent. They were followed for an entire year, blood tested weekly, and all they ate was flesh, just flesh of animals. It was pork, chicken, and beef. That's all they ate. Now, one was on a higher fat percentage, one was on a leaner percentage of protein. The one on the leaner protein did not feel as good as the one on the higher fat meals. But when they came out of that year, vitamin C, calcium, heart, liver, bowel production, stomach acidity, everything was completely optimal and normal.
Were they fasting through the day as well? Or
That wasn't
kind of one
mentioned.
meal?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
they were eating. No, so they weren't fasting. Technically, they weren't singled out. They were fasting through the night and such, but they were allowed free. They were eating 3 meals a day, and as much as they wanted on each meal.
Okay, just full
Yeah.
animal protein.
Full animal protein, 1 lean, 1 fatty. The one that was on the lean eventually went to the fat because he started to actually feel quite sick, which leads us to the discussion of protein starvation, where if you only ate protein, you would actually die even though with a full stomach. You would become severely malnourished because it's fat that carries the nutrition we need. Fat-soluble vitamins, it's all in the fat. The protein is just building blocks. Tryptophan, carnitine, carnosine are building blocks of muscle and tissue. Fat is where all the fat-soluble nutrients that provide detoxification and organ function are in. So if you were to only eat like chicken or rabbit, I'm not sure if you agree on this as well, you would become severely malnourished also.
Yes, you definitely have your
Yeah.
essential fatty acids that you need
Yeah.
to be
You have
getting
this
in.
report handy, yeah? Or this?
I was planning to put it on a slideshow at the actual workshop.
Oh, sweet.
It's going to
Okay.
be talking about the actual science of
Yeah,
it.
that'd be cool.
So yeah, for those of you interested at the actual workshop, which is called Plant Chemicals and Meat Nutrition, all of these scientific bits are going to be on slideshows, and all of these studies and references are going to be on slideshows as well. So to answer your question about the osteosclerosis, I'm 100% not worried about it, but it's an extremely good question because it's something that vegans do tend to use against it as well. Now, how do we prove this? I mean, there are carnivores out there, modern carnivores, that are 20, 30 plus years in, and they look younger than ever, stronger than ever. And these carnivores, and this is the joke, because I like to say nose to tail eating. I like to, and a lot of doctors that I work with and talk with, Paul Saladino, we all like to talk about nose to tail eating, getting the nutrients as our ancestors did, and respecting the animal, eating the entire animal, you know. So that's every part of it, and obviously you get the most nutrition for your buck eating the organ meat. But these carnivores who are in their 50s and 60 years of age that still look like they're 40 years old have been eating nothing but ribeye steaks every day, and no signs or issues of any inflammation. Boring. Oh man, that's the only thing I look
He's
forward to
Italian,
these
so
days.
he's like, he wants.
Every day, snake, wow.
But yeah,
Ribeye generally
I'll
is
get
one of the.
it.
Is it the
Impossible,
one
really
like the
impossible.
fattiest meat, or is it like the one of the fattiest?
so ribeye is about 70% fat.
Right.
So it's one of the fattiest cuts, and it's king when you talk to anyone in the carnivore community or going through the carnivore. Like, if I was to eat fillet steaks, I'd be hungry a few hours later, and I wouldn't feel energetic. I eat 3 ribeye steaks in one go, and I still feel light and ready to go run a mile or more.
How big are these steaks?
I usually go, well, ideally 300 grams Wagyu,
Yeah.
pampered.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh.
I think that really depends on the person as well, because I'm the same. I eat ribeye steak and I'm great, but I also know a lot of people that feel really sluggish.
From it as well.
Yeah.
So have you been like working with clients with this as well?
Yes, I mean, I don't really support veganism, and I don't support carnivore nor keto, because I think those things can have a place
Yeah.
therapeutically in the short term, but I always go for balance over the long term. And I
okay.
think if you remove meat, there's a lot that you lack. It's not sustainable. So I
Right.
always advise that even when I have vegan clients, I don't think it's a good thing to remove meat. Anyway,
I definitely agree on that. I mean, do I think that everyone should be carnivore? No. Do I think everyone can be and biochemically are suited for carnivore? I do think so. The thing that is that it takes, depending on where people are coming from, it can take them up to 6 to 8 months to actually regulate their body and accept and be a part of it. Because a whole life of eating various fibers, various processed foods, stressful situations, emotional traumas being held can affect how a person will transition. And it can take a lot for the body to release these things, and it can take a lot of time of adaptation before they get into it. Now, I get a lot of the argument though, and I'm not sure if maybe this is where you think as well, like you get Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Ned Norton, and these guys who are all like, if you just go red meat and you remove all the other stuff, you are impacting your gut microbiome in a negative way. But we've had a series, not mine, I haven't really been checking my poops, they just slide out and they're pretty good. Which is the way it should be, once a day or once every other day. Some of you may think that's strange, but less stress on the immune system. But we see people that have been on the carnivore diet 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We test their gut microbiome, and their gut microbiome has 84% more diversity than somebody eating a typical omnivorous diet, which is really strange. And we still don't understand fully how that works. But the fiber that not the fiber, the bacteria that necessarily only feeds off of fiber or only produces energy from glucose is very much present still in a carnivore's gut microbiome, producing and putrefying protein into energy and B vitamins very efficiently. Not to say that carnivore doesn't still have some form of glucose and fiber coming in, because a lot of us still eat dairy, and a lot of us, use gluconeogenesis because of the amount of protein. I'm eating up to 1 kilo or more of meat a day. A lot of that protein is going to gluconeogenize into glucose again, so that's going to feed certain bacteria. But this is where we're starting to understand, does bacteria only feed on what's put into the intestine, or does the intestine seek back things for the bacteria to eat? And this is a very interesting subject.
I mean, your brain needs glucose as well, so obviously gluconeogenesis will always happen even if you remove all the carbs.
Even through ketone
directly.
bodies,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
always there, yeah. So just a point to add there with the ketone, I do find now that ketogenesis is only a state of deep survival used for chronic disease. I do find that it's too much of a restricted and a starvation kind of diet to function optimally and healthily long term.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that's something I find.
I think everything that Dom's saying is quite interesting. I think it'd be really cool to maybe get some of you that have gone through some of the transition process, maybe talk about your experience, what have you kind of been going through, and then people maybe can ask kind of questions based off of that. Yeah.
Jack Russo.
Anybody?
What you saying?
Yeah.
So I actually met Dom last year, and we've been working together since. We met on kind of a gathering for people that like to move and had interesting profiles. So we all met up to learn from one another and do sessions on different topics that were our fields of expertise. So he did a session on carnivore and his experience with it. Then back then I did some dieting back in my day. I come from bodybuilding as well, long time ago. Was on very low fat, moderate carb, high protein, something like that. And then I am a personal trainer, and I exercise a whole lot. So I never really bothered taking care of my diet anymore after I went on a severely bodybuilding diet. Like, I kind of ate whatever I wanted and ate whatever I thought was healthy. So eat your vegetables, mix it up with carbs, proteins, fats, whatever. Looking back, I ate pretty high sugar and here and there a good amount of vegetable oils that were pretty inflammatory. I also don't react well to a lot of vegetables. I don't react well to oatmeal, that kind of stuff. I was always bloated and yeah, it just didn't feel too good. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called colitis, and I have been which essentially means that my body was rejecting the large intestine and was sending antibodies to it to destroy it. So ever since I was on medication for that for 2 years. Medication kept it in control, but still I had to take medication for it. Also, the diet that was pretty high in sugar, as well as vegetable oils here and there and other stuff that just causes inflammation, made it so that I had pretty bad joint inflammation that didn't seem to go away, together with the heavy sports I was doing. So tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, that didn't seem to go away. So after meeting Dom, he kind of convincingly said that he thought he could pretty easily cure my autoimmune or reverse my autoimmune disease and lower the amount of inflammation in my body. So I thought, let's try it out and see what happens. First 2 weeks, pretty shit. First week, cravings for anything sweet and just not, I couldn't get saturated ever. I ate, one meal was, like one day I ate 2 kilos and more of meat. I still hungry.
Ribeye or?
Everything, man. Like I just, whatever, all meat. Fish, steaks, eggs. Then second week I felt sick for 4 days. Just bad energies. Just like I had a flu. Third week was a little bit better. By the fourth week I started feeling alright. And ever since it just kept improving until now at this point, like the last couple of months, I feel like I'm really kind of on track. I know what I'm doing. I'm saturated all of the day. I don't need a lot of meals. We usually eat 2 meals a day and are perfectly fine with it. We train very hard before the first meal.
You do like a fast time window?
Yeah, I did for a long time, and now
but now it's more like changes every day.
Yeah.
Usually you're not going below 16 hours. So.
Okay, right.
But the most important thing was that my autoimmune disease did disappear after 2 months, which Dom said it probably would be 2 months. So after 2 months, I stopped my medication right away at the start, but the symptoms started coming back 2 weeks in. Then I went on medication again, stopped again after 2 months, and never had to take meds ever again. So that's pretty nice. I had my blood done not too long ago. Everything fine. Testosterone is higher than ever. High cholesterol, but good balance. Super low inflammation. So I'm actually more healthy than I've ever been, I guess. Yeah. Also build on some muscle. That's the important. Yeah, first. Yeah.
Your question. See the doctor that diagnosed you for your autoimmune disease. Do you get it rechecked? Did they say that it's gone? Or
No, I haven't seen him. But yeah, if I had the autoimmune disease, I'd be shitting my pants right now.
Literally.
It'd be interesting to see at what extent if it's completely gone that you can't find a trace of it, like it's increased.
Yeah, well, I guess like if it were still traces in there, I might be getting some symptoms. I could get checked, but I feel really good. I had a lot of exams done with cameras, and like your intestinal wall is fucking off. It's like you're gonna feel something. But so your intestinal walls look really damaged, like you fall with your bike and your skin is gone, like it looks like that, like really gross. But it also comes with symptoms, and now everything is so smooth. I can't imagine there being anything wrong. I could get checked, but I think it's useless.
Did you do dairy or?
I eat dairy. I handle dairy well, and I love me some high fat, low sugar yogurt. So I eat some with sausage. It's really good. Yeah. So you get cured meat, so you dip it in and you eat it. The saltiness of the sausage and the yogurt goes right together. But yeah, I eat dairy, butter, eggs, and a lot of meat.
Yeah, like I did a 5-day water fast, like I feel that regularly. But then after that, like the first time I broke my fast with the Brazilian barbecue and 3 kilos of meat. Yeah, I was sick for 6 months.
That's heavy, bro.
So just ease into it is probably the best.
Yeah, especially after a water fast, you want time for everything to kick back up again. So I normally start with like a bone broth or snake juice, which is a mixture of different salts.
I have never heard of snake.
Oh, I should look that one up. It's pretty good. It's good for take even during your water fast. And yeah, like a broth, some light probiotics as well. Is a good time to get those in before 6 kilos of meat at my favorite restaurant.
Exactly.
Funny enough, when I met Dom, I was on a bodybuilder diet, so eating 6 times a day with the little snacks in between, chicken and rice and broccoli, oats definitely first thing in the morning as well, protein shakes, the lot. I was full in. I could never ever understand how to control my body fat, because at one point I was super lean. After that, this is all I cared about at the time. I didn't care about anything internal. It was all external health. So I could never get that body fat back down again. So on the first date with Dom, I'm putting this steroid cream all over my face because I had eczema on my mouth and my lips, so they were swollen, pussy, gross. I don't know what he saw in me. And I also shared with him my reproductive issue.
Real out there, the first real saleswoman. A real saleswoman.
Yeah, well, I don't know how it is. So I also had the reproductive issues that I shared with him as well. This was back with the metabolic typing, so he stuck me on a fast and then gently eased me back into foods and thankfully cleared all those issues. So that was my first taste into internal health. Then we went into ketogenic, pretty heavy after that. So the transition from keto to then when I heard that podcast and we got into carnivore wasn't much of a shock for us. So we transitioned pretty well into it. But the benefits that came with that just felt like it got better and better and better and better. There was no signs of reproductive issues coming back. I came off all the medication that they used to put me on to cover up the symptoms. Because what I learned from doctors is to cover up the symptom rather than treat the cause. So meeting Dom thankfully opened up my mind to treating your body and finding out the source of these issues rather than covering them up. My body fat during the carnivore transition was friggin' nuts. My body fat completely dropped. It was like my body changed completely. My muscle mass just continued to grow, as well as my strength and energy. So those were the things that I noticed most. And also mental health. I used to be riddled with medication, and one of them was for anxiety. My brain was so foggy and hectic and illogical completely. And so changing the diet and my relationship to food not only was interior, exterior as well, but it changed my life completely, down to my job, down to my career, knowing what I wanted to do. So as cheesy as it sounds, when you put the trust into someone and actually being open to learning a different way and actually looking into it a little bit more, kind of opened up so much more. And yeah, meet a lot of awesome people along the way as well. So yes, enjoy it
What I want to raise with
too.
you as well, especially some of the ladies might want to know about as well, is actually I might point it back at her because this is really.
Well, I'll get the question first. Yeah.
So let's talk about hormones because male, I've already said that things stand up pretty fast and you feel like a man again.
Every day.
Every day.
Just
Ready to go.
Stand at attention. Oh, sorry.
Unbreakable. But yeah, let's talk about the female hormones and the changes. And like a lot of the women I've worked with, I brought back women that were going through menopause and had been through menopause. I brought periods back in them as well, which was not something I was expecting to do. They were working with me for something else, and their periods came back, and I was like, do I get a bonus? But yeah, let's talk about your menstruation and coming off the very destructive pill as well, and all of these things, and how the higher consumption of meat and obviously fat-soluble vitamins has affected you.
So, to cover up the symptoms from my reproductive issue, they put me on the pill, funny enough. So the pill, which I learned later on, tricks your body into thinking you're pregnant all the time, which that freaked the hell out of me. So when I came off of it, it took a while for them to start regulating, but they did with time. And with that, my health improved more so. And is there anything I'm missing with that as well? Because
I just remember you saying like less bleeding, less pain.
Yes.
Like tell us about that. Like how quick did that feel? Because it's not really the details I like to really remember.
Okay. So I will never forget this either. The pain that everyone always complains about the monthly cramps, how awful your mood swings are, how dreadful. Everybody dreads it. Well, women. Every woman dreads this. So
I know.
So
men did it too, man.
yes. Poor guys that have to put up with it. So I quickly found out that's not really how it should be. If you're really struggling during those cycles, then there's something that needs to be addressed. Mine are short, sweet. The only day I get a little bit of pain is on the first day, and then it's gone. Like, it's not anything out of the ordinary. And yeah, just that alone is pretty darn good. So that's a good sign of hormone health. Regular, normal, painless. I'm able to train as hard as I do without even being on as well. So it makes no difference to my training or my energy.
How many days does it last?
4.
4 days?
4 days exactly. And like
same day every time.
Same date as well, regulated, and I've never ever experienced that, even with the pill controlling it.
So yeah, you say it's safe then knowing when you're infertile and such. And
so using the ribbon method and knowing exactly when you're fertile. Yeah, you get to know your body a whole lot more when you're not putting prescribed drugs
but
in your
before
body.
anyone just jumps into that, how long did it take for that to normalize so that you knew it was definitely safe?
I would say about 3 to 6 months. That's when I knew completely. After 6 months, I was confident that I knew my cycles in and out.
And that's more from coming off of the pill.
Yeah. And no signs of the reproductive issues.
Yeah, I have a question for you, just on your daily practice. I mean, it's like Joaquin admitted to low sugar yogurt. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you do to spice up the diet? That's my biggest fear of this. It's just, I mean, I get so much pleasure out of food. And just imagining going to a just ribeye, nothing but ribeye every day.
That's just putting it simply. It gets
You're
a
right.
lot more spiced up.
But that's what I'm wondering is how do you spice it up? How do you keep it interesting?
So I'm probably the most, not strictest, but very much on this. My meat candy is cured meats. I love cured meats so much. Like if you put a cheesecake in front of me, and I freaking love cheesecake, put cured meats in front of me, I'm always going to go for the cured meats. Because I always look at how I'm going to feel for the next 5 to 6 days afterwards. I never feel like it's worth it. Because you're eating this way, and you're so happy with what you're eating, your relationship to the other foods it's like putting a bowl of like cardboard in front of me. It doesn't do anything for me. I always smell people's foods because I feel like half the taste is in the smell, but I don't ever want it. it's really strange. It's a switch that I think if you haven't experienced it, it's hard to get your head around. But I used to eat everything, and I've got no urge.
So
for
like
it
no
at
coconut
all.
water?
I actually had coconut water the other day, and I felt like it bloated my stomach out a bit. So I don't know whether coconut water is for me. That's the
Yeah,
only
here I
thing.
drink coconut water as well.
Yeah, him loves it.
I don't do it at home, but in a hot climate like this,
Uh-huh.
I feel it's beneficial.
Right. That doesn't break the spell of the carnivore diet, right?
No, you know what's important. You know, you eat a whole lot of what's important, and that keeps you healthy, especially if you're in it for a while. And then the rest is just, you know, you can have some of the rest. It's not gonna harm you. It's like an extra. But if you eat a lot of what's important, that's the important part. Keeps you healthy.
Like what Eddie was saying with regards to not actually like wanting the foods anymore. Like me, I've only really been doing it for a short period of time, and Johnson too, relatively. But I used to never understand people that would they would just not like a certain kind of food that I would love. So like I would love like pizza, and people just like, yeah, I don't really care about it. You know what I mean? But some people just don't you just don't have the urge to eat those foods anymore. And that's one big thing that I found recently was all these foods I used to absolutely love, I just don't care about it anymore.
No cravings.
Yeah, no cravings. And actually I do crave cured meats. Like I love salami and pepperoni and all that stuff. I get my little calamari fix every once in a while, like fried calamari, but for the most part I don't. I used to absolutely love basil pesto sauce, you know, and all the the sweets and stuff like that. I mean, I used to be 110 kilos, you know, big boy, and I used to eat everything. Yeah. Never looked like Ash though, but I was like three of us here together. So, but yeah, that's a very cool part of it is that you might be worried about all the foods you'd be missing out on, but once you get to the point that 2, 3, 4 months in or whatever, you actually just won't even be on your mind. And you'll eat how Nettie eats is that she eats for how she knows she'll feel, as opposed to this guy's gonna miss
my life without pasta,
as an Italian,
pizza, and I cannot imagine my life
If
without.
you grew up used to those foods, it's not until you take them out that you actually feel the difference and then try to have them again. And if you feel shit, you're probably not going to want them as you did before.
Exactly.
That is true.
Yeah.
Because I live in Asia already 25 years, and I can stay eating rice, eating other things, without. But I feel to eat pasta. I feel to eat pizza. I really.
Yeah, that's
something
very
like
normal.
when I feel hungry, my mind is go to the sandwich with prosciutto, or doesn't go to a stick bone or things like that.
Yeah.
And I eat a lot of fish also in Italy, but we always mix it up with pasta or with other things like that.
Got
We
it all
try-
wrong. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but in Italy too, we have people living more than 100 years,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
using the
In the
Mediterranean
Yeah.
diet.
Actually, that's
so
a
eat
good topic
pasta,
to bring
tomato,
into.
olive oil, and the people is living for
Yeah.
100 years more. And
Well,
we have
I
in
mean-
Sardinia one of
Yeah.
little city where there are many of
Yeah.
these people more than 100 years.
Well, I mean, a lot of the Italian diet came because of a deep poverty after a lot of what went on there as well, which is a whole different subject, which is why they started eating most of those breads. But the longevity of these countries, when you compare them to the next neighboring towns that actually ate more meat, is nowhere near in comparison. In fact, all of the data that we've collected from centenarians are all heavy meat consumption, although they weren't exclusively meat. They ate potatoes,
And eggs.
they ate
A
rice,
lot of centenarian people,
but
they
they
say
ate a lot of lamb, a lot of fish oil, a lot of
Yeah.
shellfish, a lot of DHA. And the more DHA you consume, the more your brain's going to develop, the longer you're going to live.
They're usually also quite active in their lifestyle. Aren't
And
they?
they're stress-free, active, and the sunlight is in there, very present.
There's a lot of social
So they can
interaction as well.
exactly. There's a lot more to that as well. But I mean, going back to the cravings you have aren't really your thoughts. They're bacterial signals coming from your second brain, the gut. Once you eliminate those certain foods for a little while, you start to change that gut dysbiosis. You start to reduce the amount of these other fungal colonies that thrive off of carbohydrates and quick energy sources. So when you cut down those bacteria by eliminating, which is what you can call carnivore, I guess, an elimination diet. But it's not about just having meat. This is where everything gets dogmatic and cultish with nutrition. People go, "You're not a carnivore. You had a freaking avocado yesterday." Well, like, oh, if I'm gonna have my avocado when I fucking want it, you know, it's ridiculous. It's not to say that you shouldn't have any of those other foods. Like if you look at Maria's plate as well, right? It's an excellent plate of food. I can't argue with that not being a healthy plate of food. It's just going by how you feel as well. So you reduce that bacteria, you reduce the cravings for quick, simple sugars. Obviously, if you're eating more protein and fat, you're satiated for longer. When you're satiated for longer, you're not just getting little cravings and hunger, so you're less impulsive with making food decisions, which usually means something quick to put in your mouth, which is a bread or a chocolate bar or a sweet or something like that. Then also by how you feel. This is something I'm going to cover in the workshop more in depthly, but plant chemicals, grains, the lectins, the oxalates, the phytates, all of these things that you're ingesting from the plants, they can make you feel bad. But you don't know what that feeling bad or different is until you've eliminated them for at least a week or two and then brought them in. And then you see, oh, my body's a bit more watery. My mind's a little bit slower. Oh, my body is aching, my joints ache a bit more because oxalates crystallize. Things like broccoli are very heavy in oxalates. You eat a load of broccoli, you may feel that certain pains in your joints are actually not arthritis or old age. It's oxalates becoming crystallized by oxidization. So you start to feel these things and you go, well, if it makes me feel like that, am I going to eat it again? That's generally how this kind of works. That's generally how it alters the human being's mind. As before, years ago, we didn't have this problem. We just knew, oh, meat, food wasn't a commodity. Food wasn't an industrial product. It was just, oh, it's time to eat, sit down with the family, eat. What's there to eat? Oh, we have cows and chicken out in the back. That's what we eat. That's all it was. It wasn't until the industrial age, you know, coming in. Now, if we look at all of the communities or civilizations that prized a certain vegetable, like the Egyptians, you know, who have a famous saying, the Egyptian scale of fasting, eat when the sun is highest and eat when the sun is setting, never fear disease again. But yet they were full of disease and they were very malnourished. They even had their priests perform, what's the name now? The water up the bum. Enema, thank you. Very professional. When they had the water up the bum, they had their priests do this once a week for their people because they were eating so much grain. Once a week. Because their people were eating so much grain. Egypt was one of the first civilizations to prize grain. It traded grain with Italy and the Romans. It traded grain with the Greeks. The Italians and the Greeks' physique went downhill since the introduction of grain to their culture. The gladiator, mule, and slave grain fuel, which is why they were watery. The Greeks were in excellent health up until grain was traded between the Romans and the Egyptians. This is all recorded in history as well. It's very simple to find. If you look at Hippocrates, and Hippocrates was just a modern one. You have to look even further back to more of the philosophers and ancestral dietitians of their time when the Greeks were really excelling in physical robustness. Their men and women were the strongest. Even their women all had six-packs in those times. They were the most robust civilization. But they were, they were eating meat, and that's pretty much it, and fish. They were eating a lot of fish. They ruled over the Mediterranean Sea, the Greeks, you know, and they fought off all of the invasions of the Persians and all of these because they were just so much more robust. You also look at the Mongolians and the Chinese. The Chinese army was off of rice and gruel, a slave diet. The Mongolians didn't have to light campfires during battle, so they could never be tracked. They only drank raw blood and ate raw meat and were kicking the asses of the Chinese because they're all taller and more muscular than the rest. All through meat consumption.
I want to get taller too.
I want to get taller
I
too.
get taller.
Yeah, that's T-bone steaks instead of ribeyes.
T-bone steaks.
Prescribe me some T-bone steaks.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to spicing up the carnivore, and we say carnivore because of the way of eating, there's so much variations. I mean, if you need crunchy, you've got a whole range of duck, pork, chicken, crackling, all of these things to eat from. Yeah,
Crispy
you know,
calamari.
crispy calamari, all of these things, and you shouldn't feel bad about adding a little bit of coconut or a little bit of crumbs here and there. It's that 80 to 20%. I mean, in your holistic studies, did it say 80 to 20 as well? Yeah, 80 to 20. You know, 80% good, 20% bad here and there. Now, do I come out of carnivore every couple of weeks or every here and there? Man, how many protein gelatos have I been eating since I've been here as well?
Yeah, quite a lot. Yeah.
There you go. Exposed.
I think it's really good that you can still have that
balance.
room for
Yeah.
having a little bit.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
But the transition phase is what's tough. Yeah.
That's the bit
Yeah.
where you have to be strict. Once your body knows the switch and you have the chemical balance and your body is internally optimal, you have no seepage or permeable intestine, your liver is excreting the right amount of bile, your stomach acidity is back to optimum pH, your gallbladder is storing the right amount of bile as well, and your nervous system is switching between sympathetic and parasympathetic optimally, you can have the freedom. You should indulge in these foods here and there, and I do think there should be metabolic flexibility in your gut as well. Now, if I'm going for a comp in calisthenics or powerlifting, or I want my skin to look its best, or I want to be the most shredded, being strict is what's going to get me that result the quickest, the easiest, while feeling good. I'm not going to shred body fat while feeling lethargic and brain dead and then passing out on stage. I'm not going to increase strength while being bulky and fat. I'm not going to clear my skin up by using herbal remedies and freaking steroid creams. I'm going to use food as medicine, because once you give the body food as medicine and you allow time for the body to clean, your body detoxifies all by itself. The best way to detoxify: own a liver, own intestines, own a brain.
I need enough protein.
And eat enough protein, and your body's going to do a pretty damn good job. If it's not doing so, then you need to hire me and I'll tell you the hidden secrets.
And what are the best meats to eat, like the most nutritious meats to eat?
Ooh,
Meats and
so-
vegan.
So I like to advocate for grass-fed beef. Beef is king, and shellfish is king as well. Shellfish contain the most amount of DHA and a lot of selenium as well that you're going to need. Eggs are also king. So having a good mixture of these is going to make sure that you're pretty good. Now, there's a huge argument now whether grain-fed beef, grass-fed beef, which one is going to be good. There's carnivores 20 years plus on just grain-fed beef. They like the taste, and grain-fed has a more density of calories, so it makes them feel fuller because it's fattier. Now, most cattle is on a mixture of grain and grass-fed, because grain is a type of grass that it's naturally supposed to eat. But even just eating grain-fed factory farm, I don't like to support it because it harms the environment and it's not fair for the animal's life, it's not respectful. But even so, eating that meat, you're going to thrive. Even if it's hormonal and antibiotic fed, you'd have to eat 27 250 gram steaks as a grown man in order to get any residual effects of all of that stuff. I would like to see, I'll challenge Ian to try and eat that many, because he's pretty damn solid on the food front there. But I don't even think Ian could eat 27 of those steaks in one day to get antibiotic effects.
I think we're gonna get us another story. Yeah, Mish. Yeah.
Okay, so
You were very recently couldn't fully converted until maybe the other night where I made you eat it.
yeah, I have the occasional
watercress?
Yeah, I have the occasional dark chocolate or whatever, but yeah, yeah. So I believe in the try something and see how it makes you feel approach. I've had a varied experience with food with this mindset, and I even did a week where I only ate mangoes. This was years ago. Yeah, it was really. It was yeah.
Mish Mango Woman. I did an Instagram name.
I almost
Really
changed
the
it to that,
banana girl.
actually. It's still one of my favorite foods. But yeah, I guess my relationship with food, my movement background started with yoga, and then my relationship with food was, before that I was very much into the taste, the sensation, the experience of food, and so it's pretty much a foodie. And then I got into like like whole foods and like high quality foods, and then it turned into after spending time in India studying yoga and teaching there, this mindset of animals are sacred and should respect them, and like challenging myself in that way. And then after that, I started going into acro yoga and acrobatics, so I needed a little bit more protein, and that's when I started. So my training was much higher. I was trying to develop more strength because I had the flexibility part naturally and through yoga. And I started looking up like what a lot of these bodybuilders kind of do with eating, because I found myself training like these very intensive month-long trainings, and I didn't prepare for it. I was like, I'm just gonna do this training. It's 8 hours a day, and I found myself after maybe like the first 3 days, like everything in my body hurt, like my muscles, my joints, my energy was low. There's a lot of thought involved when you practice partner acrobatics as well. So like I didn't have the mental capacity to pay attention to what I was supposed to be learning. I didn't have the mental capacity to communicate with my partner without like freaking out on him and blaming him for shit, and like getting frustrated with myself physically, and I couldn't really keep up with it. So I started introducing more meat. I was like, okay, I'm not really counting my macros, but let me have more protein, more sleep, and like a little bit less carbs. And I was playing around with carbs because I ended up doing like 2 or 3, 4 different like month-long trainings throughout the last 2 years, and in 1 year. And then after one training, I'll try something a little bit different. Like, okay, maybe I'll do carbs in the morning before the training, and then I'll have like my little snack in the 15-minute break in between, and then I'll give another like 3 hours of training. And at one point I was like, maybe I won't have the snack, maybe it's just spiking my blood sugar, maybe. And it just didn't work. I couldn't have the energy for it, and I wasn't making any gains in my practice, not really, So yeah, then I came here and started training at the gym and actually working specifically on gaining strength. And then I was trying to supplement, like, because I refused to eat red meat. I was like, no, cows are my friends. Like, I love bacon, but like, pigs are so smart, I was like, I love, like, I'll eat fish because I love sushi, even though I know they're animals, and I feel bad, but it makes me feel good, and so.
Cows are friend. Name one cow in your contact.
I know. I was like very like I don't know. It was very difficult for me. Yeah, it was very, very difficult. And then slowly I started getting like spoken to about benefits of eating meat and maybe try this, and so I was planning. I came in November, and I was planning on doing this month-long, very extremely intensive partner acrobatic training. Originally, I was going to go for 9 weeks, and everyone told me it was fucking hard, and people are like, by the end of the program, the flyers are just dropping. They just don't even want to do it anymore. Like, people are like just complaining about how much their body hurts, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to spend all this money on a training where I want to learn things, and not be able to keep up with it. Like that, I don't see the point in that. So I came to learn a lot of strength, to train, to get strong, and I was like, okay, let me figure out what does my body need, so that I can sustain energy, gain strength, and feel good, and then I started introducing red meat, which was more of it was a very psychological thing. I had to really overcome that, and then I don't believe in the industry, so like I do eat meat now. Obviously, I predominantly only eat meat, so I do believe in eating grass-fed beef, because I'm like, okay, well, I know it's like, if I could find the happy cow, I'd eat the happy cow, Like,
so you're eating a bit of beef a week now, or once a day, or?
Oh, I eat once a day. I fast like 20 plus hours in a day.
Very OMAD.
Yeah, yeah. I just try to find, like, if I'm gonna eat, it's to be like the highest quality, and plus, I don't support the industry. I don't. Like, I believe in a sense that, energetically, like the way that the animal was raised and the way it was killed, like, kind of affects, like, you as you eat it,
That's a good subject. Yeah, that's a good subject as well.
I mean,
I can get deeper into that as well.
that's how I feel, like,
Yeah.
because I want to be connected to what I eat. And even when I was vegetarian, or I want to make sure that I honor where the food comes from the farm to the table, like, and all the pieces, whoever killed the animal or farmed or brought the produce from like the store and cooked it, like every piece of that is important to me to understand if I'm going to ingest it and consume, and I need food to survive, So once I got past that point, then it was like a week, 2 weeks.
Free flow, just start eating everything.
Yeah, well, it was a week, 2 weeks of like, fuck, I'm fasting, so that's hard. I have cravings, like motherfuckers, like carbs. I just want to eat French fries and chips and like just carbs, man. And then on top of that, like I love bananas and then like sugar. Like I went to my training and I was so stressed, started eating like donuts because I was back in the States, and like all these things, like, oh, I can't get this in Bali, let me eat some of this. Like, and then I developed this really hard sugar craving, and I was like, fuck, it's so hard to break that. So I think, like, I literally went from like eating everything to cutting out like everything but meat, and so the struggle, I was like, okay, is it gluten, carbs, sugar, fasting? I don't know, but after the week, 2 weeks had passed, no cravings, super energized. Like, I'm not even training that much because I had a shoulder injury, so but I still feel strong. I feel very clear. I've been like confused with where my career was going, and now I feel very focused, very driven, very empowered to taking action. I have tons of ideas all the time. It's like, tell this guy all the time, I have an idea, and it's like, it's not just an idea, it's an idea I want to like actually take actionable steps toward. So yeah, it's been a really big life changer in a way.
How long have you been doing this?
About a month.
About a month?
Yeah.
And you're almost all just meat.
Yeah, like I said, I just had my period, so I was like, I want some chocolate. But even then, to be honest, because like chocolate feels really good to me, especially when I'm menstruating. But I did have the chocolate. I think it was, I noticed a lot of it's in my mind. So I was like, okay, like my mind wants to feel good right now because like, I did have a little bit of energy dip. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I want the chocolate. And I had some, but it wasn't the same. It was like, it was like kind of nice, but it wasn't the same satisfaction.
It's kind of funny, the whole experience you're talking about of coming off the sugar is very similar to like a lot of people's experience with like coming off drugs, right? Like like you're just like, fuck, I need all this sugar.
It was. I was like calling Gojeks like my first. I don't care, but I was like, I'm just gonna call Gojek and have bring chocolate. Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that I stuck with it, and I tell people now, I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this thing, and it works for me, and so I don't, and yeah, and I find myself like, well, I used to like that, cheesecake, I used to like this, and then I don't want to be mean to myself and restrict myself from something, so I'll have a taste, and then I'm like, this actually makes me feel like shit the next day, So
it doesn't taste as good as it used to.
No.
I used to love Oreo cookies. I don't even like
You can hunt in the wild, can give you the same amount of energy or the same benefit of the meat of animal growing in a cage.
What if it's the same?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hunting ruminant animals in the wild, the diversity of plants and phenolic compounds they're eating, and phenolic compounds is the nutrients from the sunlight that photosynthesizes, you're getting a lot more. That's why like Dev and I are going to be spearfishing again because we want that fresh fish ourselves, wild, in the clean water that we choose. Yeah, you're getting a lot more, but it's not to say that the animals that we have now won't be enough. Like longevity wise, will you feel as best with them? Perhaps not as good as you would if you're eating moose or venison every day. Yeah, I know, right? I'm missing venison already as well. But yeah, you're still gonna get a very good transition of nutrition into yourself from those animals, and you're still gonna get adequate protein and fat. Now, when it comes to like the energy and such, human beings are the most intellectual killers out there. Okay, we do love to kill, but we don't actually love to kill without purpose. If you look at the way most animals die in the wild, they suffer a much grueling fate because a predator is intelligent enough to stay away from the pointy end of an animal, So most animals are eaten while they're alive, and they're eaten from the back end, and they're eaten through the stomach first or the anus first. We just put a bullet or a bolt straight through the head.
Not all the time.
Well,
There
unless
are
you're
some-
following
some-
vegan
yeah.
documentaries and that 2% of factory farming, then I have to agree with you on that. But if you don't
Well,
support those
if
places,
we all eat only meat,
Uh-huh.
we have no happy animals on the planet.
that's a whole other subject. But actually, it's very easy, and we do, because there's so much land that's only available for ruminant activity, but it's not utilized for ruminant activity. Also, crop growth and monocropping destroys 3 inches of topsoil, and we're becoming deserts because of this. In fact, ruminant activity, like elephants, which they saw when they started removing elephants from a habitat, it started to become desert. You put the elephants and the cows back, desertification is reversed. So there's more than enough animals to feed everyone being carnivore, and actually making them happy at the same time by allowing them to do their job, which is plodding along, eating grass and shitting on it and spreading grass.
Yes.
But back
Clone meat.
or clone meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the Impossible Burger or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is already nearly being taken
Yeah.
off the market because it's poisoning all the rats they're testing it on.
Oh, that sounds very good.
Yeah.
But
So they're
I have a
taking that off
question
soon.
about smell. What does it do with your smell? How,
Sense
you-
of smell or the way you smell?
No. How do
Odor
you
and
smell?
stuff like that.
Your odor.
So during the transition, depending on how much is coming out of your body, you can have a stinky breath, but actually your pheromones become stronger and you actually stink less. Like Nelly and I don't use any deodorant really. So yeah, like unless I'm sweating right next to you, you're not really gonna smell my pheromones. So because it's to do with skin bacteria, it's also to do with the way you burn in sunshine. The skin bacteria as well dictates your scent and how you react to light and how you take in light. But that's a whole other holistic subject rather than carnivores. But as I was saying, to do with the energy of meat, most animals, when they die in the wild, they give off a lot of cortisol and a lot of adrenaline. So an animal in the wild actually has more stress in its body than a factory farmed or an animal that's being taken to the slaughterhouse from being grass-fed all its life. Now, there's a typical argument. This is why it was hard for me to transition out of veganism to eating red meat, because I got so caught up on the energetic practices of what yoga teaches and what veganism teaches, and it was that by eating death, I was putting death into my body, and it was going to cause rage, and it was going to cause... Yeah, seriously, I thought that. Yeah, I went full retard. I went full vegan, sorry. Yeah, and I thought that also I was going to bring cancer and negative energy into my body, but when you eat an animal, even in the wild, if you look at tribes, all of the meat is entirely drained of blood. All of the energy of the animal and all of the hormones in the animal are run completely out of its body, because you have to dry meat and you have to cure meat in order to eat it, unless you're eating it raw there, which some tribes do it, and I do that with liver and such. It's extremely nutritious, but you're not intaking any of those hormones or any frequencies of death in your body. If you have read Journey of Souls or read any freaking books, yeah, or read any hypnotherapy of the human being, you will understand, or you will get to learn, that any soul activity or energy of the body leaves at the point of trauma. At that point of trauma, you are dead. There is no point for anything to be hanging around the body. Your carbon vessel is now just material to become decomposed. There is nothing of any emotional activity or resemblance to character and personality in a dead body.
Well, plants are they communicate too. Plants these days.
Plants are highly intelligent. Yeah, that's a good point. They feed each other, they communicate each other, they give off scents, and they give off sounds to each other to warn when a predator is eating it.
So vegans are racists.
Vegans are speciesists is what we say. But yeah, so plant chemicals. This is what I'm going to be covering in the workshop. Plants defend themselves not by running away or by eating or scaring away. They defend themselves by chemicals. these toxins, and this is what we're eating on a daily basis. Now, can these toxins offer a comedic effect and in small amount not disturb us? Yes. Does it mean never eat them? No. If you have a tolerance to them, if you don't eat them in a large amount, if you enjoy the taste of them and you don't feel any of those plant chemicals damaging you, do whatever the fuck you want. Eat the food. I get so many questions on my Instagram. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? You can eat whatever you want, buddy. And then, no, I meant, is it good for me or bad for me? I was like, test it out. It's up to you. But what I'm saying is, look at what happens when you remove them. What does it do to the human body? Look at where they originated from. Look at what their chemicals are originally meant and designed to do in an animal's body. They're designed to warn an animal not to eat more of its species in order for the plant to survive. Seeds, nuts, those are the most defended parts of a plant because it wants to survive, it wants to grow more of its kind. So all of the phytates in there. So when an animal eats a seed or a nut, it's designed to pass through the digestive system and be spread somewhere else to grow. But when humans chew it up and try to digest it, it releases all these chemicals that were there to defend it in the first place and wreak havoc in the gut. So why do 98% of the population have permeable guts or gut dysbiosis and parasitic infection? Is because these lectins and these phytates that open up in the intestines, with the fiber, pull apart the intestines, leave room for fungal and bacteria types to grow that feed on the waste and the indigestible, insoluble fibers. And you do that over many years, it generally leads to the demise of your intestines, which 10, 20 years later of veganism takes for most to find out, depending on how stubborn they are.
Well, in the fitness industry, so this is where I came from, right? So the fitness industry, it doesn't matter. It's like if it fits your macros, right? It doesn't matter. Like if it fits your macros, just eat it, right? Yeah, exactly. So for me, like the journey, because my expertise is just helping people get down lean body fat, right? So I was always and eating like high protein, moderate fat, and I was also eating carbs as well. And I was that guy that was like, yeah, you can eat like Krispy Kremes and whatever, just so long as like you're fitting it in and you're enjoying your diet, all this kind of stuff, right? Like I wasn't really focused on health. I was focused on what most people think they want, which is a six pack, right? It's like the aesthetics. And so over the years, I've transitioned into health, which is more of what we're talking about here, which for most people in the fitness space, they have no idea what we're talking about here, because like for me, for example, the nuts thing, like permeating the gut with all the phytates and stuff, like I never knew that. I'm in the health industry. So imagine like all the other fitness bros out there that don't know this stuff.
They're the ones that are constantly attacking us now.
Yeah.
They're just like,
Of course.
because we put up a post the other day that started a war. I mean, it was funny. Like,
That's really great for your business, my friend.
It was, but I had a big headache because of the amount of typing I had to do in order to explain scientific things that they didn't get in the end anyway.
Of course.
So, and going back and looking through studies and sending them that, big waste of time. But it was that, not to say that macros as well, and Devin had a big play in this in helping Nettie really intellectually put it out there to some of these people. It's not to say that, okay, you take away calories from the body, you're generally going to lose some weight, right? You're going to starve yourself a little bit as well. But is that the primary mechanism? Is that the only way? And this is where they don't want to understand. So a friend of mine put up a very thought-provoking meme, to say it politely, and it was all of these fitness gurus promoting macros and creating bodies through macros should have all their licenses revoked. Of course, that was a big thing to say. So they came back with us, and the funny thing is I turned around and I said to one of them and said, okay, so you've been doing this for 10 years now. You're on hormone replacement drugs. You take painkillers to get through your workout. You take a pre-workout to get your brain functioning, to think of looking at your phone to see all the reps and sets you have to do. And then you have to make 6 hours of your day time to eat. Where's the logic in this? As when you eat predominantly what your body asks for, which is what it's made up of, which are the essentials, is there one carbohydrate that is essential on this planet? Could you name me one? There's not one. So I call them decorative items. The essentials are fat decorative item that I really enjoy also. Oh, give me that bit.
You have more, huh?
Yeah. So
I need to try those.
they're really freaking good. Nirvana has nailed it. Can you like zoom in slowly on that face? Oh man, it's ridiculous. But yeah, the two essentials, which are cassava biscuit and no, not gelato ice cream, fat and protein. When you give the body that and enough abundance, as Joachim was saying, at first you can eat enough. Because your marrow stores need to fill up first before you start working on different parts of your body, before you start building muscle with that cholesterol, you need to fill up your marrow stores. So you start eating a lot, eventually that hunger normalizes. But when you give your body enough of those, there's a different hormonal exchange that allows you to eat once, that allows you to eat maybe twice at most a day, because you're not thinking about food. And that's such a freedom, like how you do 20 hours in. That's a freedom that while you're doing that, you're cleaning, you're recycling cells, there's cell program death going on. You're then building muscle with that excess cholesterol that's going through, that extra intracellular activity going on. And you only have to think about eating once or 2 hours of your day. And this is something they can't get their heads around, because they think that the moment you stop eating, muscle starts to waste. But your body's extremely clever. It knows, and we know from studies now, that longevity is correlated with muscle mass. So why would your body tear away at muscle mass rather than fat, ketones, and then gluconeogenesis from a little bit of protein, which in a 3-day fast, you only lose about 0.5 and depending on some, 1.3 grams of muscle within 3 days. That's nothing to negate power to the brain. Yeah.
I'm a psychologist, so I'm very interested in the mental aspects of this. Like I heard people saying that you're more clear and stuff. So is there an explanation that you have for that?
Yeah,
for
so
that clarity.
That's a good question. So I've worked with quite a few people with mental health disorders as well, and this is still a very unknown bit, like to the T, and you probably agree with this as well. There's not very much maybe to find on this
I would
clinically.
say inflammation and blood sugar dysregulation tend to be the biggest things.
She just answered it. There you go. Yeah, once you remove the inflammation and you normalize the gut, the signaling to the brain is pretty much on point. So it's usually a lack or a deterioration of B vitamin, the different B vitamin producing bacteria, which causes most of the anxiety and depression. And I'm not sure if you saw this as well, but a correlation between very low LDL cholesterol in men and aggressive and suicidal tendencies, which was really, that came out last year in a clinical trial.
When you think of cholesterol being the building molecule for testosterone and all the hormones anyway, and having it low would definitely have an impact on that.
Exactly. So low cholesterol is linked to a lot of the mental disorders, and especially ADHD in kids and all of these attention deficit disorders. These kids are highly inflamed on sugar. And once you take that away, and a lot of kids that are suffering with autism and such, or getting epileptic fits and such, the pathways to the brain really normalize these issues.
Cool. And anxiety too, right? Anxiety issues.
Yeah, anxiety issues. Anxiety is generally a busy mind, and it's generally from poor gut bacteria and chronic inflammation, as Maria said as well. Most of it's down to that.
Yeah. What about insect protein?
Insect protein?
Yeah, like cricket protein.
So that's definitely been in our evolution as well. Whether they enjoyed it back then and whether we enjoy it now. But insect protein is very lean. Okay, the makeup of it is like eating rabbit and chicken only. You would starve to death with a full stomach. You would get diarrhea. Excess protein causes diarrhea, and you would just lose all you're dehydrated and not enough fat. Yeah. So yeah, protein starvation is a very serious thing. A lot of people do get it in the wild when they just go around eating squirrels and rabbits and stuff like that. Not enough fat soluble nutrition in there. And it's funny that people think fiber is what removes constipation. Try eating a load of protein and see how much diarrhea you will get. Or as Johnson experienced during the transition, the most oily of watery, slippery, what else can we say?
I don't know what else can we say. It's really just poop and oil.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, multiple times a day. It's just oil.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So basically, rendered fats, it takes a while for your duodenum, the first 17 inches of your intestines, to become, that's the most voracious part for me of your whole intestine. So to put into perspective, we have a 3.3% bigger brain than all relative humanoids and primates on this planet, and a 5 times larger brain than all other carnivorous animals on this planet, like the big cats and dolphins and such. We have a 40% smaller, 40% shorter small intestine, and that's where most of our assimilation occurs. When you start eating fibers, you take away the potential of the bacteria that assimilates fat. So at first, when you're transitioning, if your fat percentage is too high, your body can't take in all of that moisture. Because protein and fat is so well assimilated, it becomes moisture rather than what vegans say decays and gets stuck in your intestines. Most of it doesn't even reach past 17 inches of your duodenum. Now, we only have a 2% capacity to ferment fiber into saturated fat and fat in total. Hindgut animals such as gorillas, or ruminant animals such as cows, deers, and all of those animals in the wild, they have a 58% capacity and have a 67% high fat diet. They're very low carb diets, high fat diets, because they're able to ferment through trillion of bacteria that starch into fat. We don't have that. So we have to use our bacteria and duodenum. So when it's adjusting to that, a lot of that fat just seeps right through and goes into the toilet, along with all of your nutrition.
Cool. So I think we're coming to the end. Does anybody have any last questions or anything?
Yeah, I'm totally in. I could just do meat, no problems. I'm hearing people just a few questions. I do intermittent fasting, and it's like bulletproof coffee. Does that, like, I enjoy that in the morning. It sustains me like until like 2 o'clock to eat. I know it's not real fasting. Is that something you don't even have to worry about, or like when you're eating the meat, or like because you say, and Ian was telling me this, he goes, man, I eat once, maybe twice a day, and I'm like sustained all day. So is that kind of the case? Like,
I mean, with coffee, I did a whole video on this because it's such a very disputed topic. So coffee is also known as a gut irritant. So if you're gut sensitive, stay the hell away from coffee. If you're skin sensitive, like how mine is, don't drink more than 1 cup, don't drink too much. Now, coffee can actually accelerate autophagy and can actually accelerate dry fasting as well, and can help accelerate the ketone exchange if you're putting fats like the bulletproof coffee. Now, that does activate your cell window. So your cell window is the time for when your mitochondria are preparing to assimilate nutrition and energy. So this is the thing where a lot of ketogenic people, bulletproofers, don't know, is that if you wake up, say 7 a.m. and you have a bulletproof coffee, that starts your cell window. An optimum cell window is anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. Some people can push it to 12, but can feel lethargic and slow the next day from 12. So if you have your coffee at 7, if your last meal isn't around, let's say 5, 6 o'clock, and you're then eating at 8, 9 o'clock, you're eating outside of that cell window, you're going against your fasting pattern, and you're actually not fasting to the benefit that you're looking for, because then it takes about 3 to 4 hours to begin a fast after eating. So, if you're well balanced with that and you don't find any negative effects, or you're using the coffee, you're using that because coffee adds 17 minutes to every minute of life. Okay, that's how fast it ages you. So it produces up to 8 to 12 hours, depending on the person and the size of their liver, cortisol running through the body, which is a stress state. So if you're not utilizing that for training or a serious amount of work, and then regulating through sunrise and sunset and sleeping well, I would say probably avoid the coffee, but most athletes can generally get away with it. That's for any coffee drinkers as well, which is probably all of us, yeah. It's just
basically saying like the coffee can be beneficial or it can be useful if you're using it like for as energy.
If you're using it
essentially, like-
immediately, because
Yeah,
it
using it immediately,
releases a lot of the stored glycogen in the liver as well, so you want to utilize that energy. You want to utilize that stressed and inflamed state, which you're already doing when you're training, right? Or mental acuity and focus, and you want to utilize that, and then you want time to normalize into parasympathetic status way before sunset, and then allow the red frequencies of sunset to further regulate the mitochondria into sleep mode and get the melanin and the melatonin to regulate nice and easy, as coffee disrupts all of that.
Yeah, 'cause I used to go for like a run, surf, and then I have my coffee afterwards, and then I go to work. You know, just like sitting down. It's
Right.
before the exercise.
Right, so I mean, if you're doing it after the exercise, you mean?
Yeah.
That's great, because then you are getting truly fasted state as well. Are you dry fasting or water fasting for that time? Water fasting. Dry fasting is even more accelerated if you can do it, although in the ocean you might become a bit too dehydrated. But yeah, so you're having your coffee, what, about 9, 10 o'clock? Okay, so before 12, yeah, that's fine, and you're falling asleep fine. Yeah, it just depends to your sensitivity. It's the same thing. I'm not going to promote coffee as a superfood or a health superfood, because chemically it's not. But does it have benefits, and does it help with certain things in your bloodstream and chemically to your brain? Yeah, it does, but in small amounts. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's harmful in that sense.
Kratom?
Kratom. I have no experience in kratom apart from since I've been here in Bali and seeing it everywhere. So, no comment. I can't say anything apart from opinions. So I'm sorry.
Cool.
I thought I
Anybody else got something? Devin?
So it seems to me like all the, I mean, it, kind of coincidentally, like I ended up on a high fat, moderate protein diet before I ever knew you. But like it, and it works so well. Like my health has improved so much. I'm ex-vegan as well. I went vegan for a year, vegetarian for 3, and my health was the worst it's ever been. It's a long story, but anyway, like, why do you think, maybe this is a question for anybody, right? But like, why do you think that the health advice that's mostly offered by, like, for example, the USDA, or by like traditional cultures, like in Chinese culture, they say you wake up and they're like, you need to eat breakfast, like eat a big breakfast, here you go, like, and they push food on you all day long, and you got to eat up until, you know, like, it's like probably like a 15-hour eating window, you know, and it's just like eating, you know, all day. So like, you know, eat lots of fiber. The vegetables and carbohydrates should be the biggest food groups. Meat and fat should be the smallest. Why do you think all of this is contrary to what we found actually works? Like, and why is everybody seem so certain, and have been certain for so long, that the opposite of what we're experiencing to work right now is true? You know, why would that be the case? I mean, aside from like conspiracy theories and like
a lot of money in sugar, a lot of money in pills,
Yeah.
a lot of money in
So follow the optimization of money, but it goes actually way further than this. It goes way further than the current corporate greed, and it goes way further than the agendas to malnourish us and to feed us pharmaceuticals and to feed the industry that is making money off of very cheap vegetables, which they make into all kinds of things that are processed foods and stabilizers and chemicals for this, that, and that food. It goes way further than that. It goes as far as kings and queens in those eras. The peasants were always fed the cheap grain, and they were always kept dumbed down because they were easier to control that way. The kings and the queens were always eating the meat and always had the rights to the lands and the animals on the meat. And, the meat of the animals from the land. And yeah, it goes as far back because it's always been about control. Every era of humankind. And it's something I find funny even about my own race, the black race. We keep going, oh, we were enslaved. Every freaking race has been enslaved, and it has been following, even blacks at one point, the Africans were enslaving other nations. And that's just how it's human nature. We're always looking to dominate others. We're always looking to dominate another part of the population. So nutrition is one of the main ways to dominate a society, to dominate a population. You take away the nutrition, you make them, well, physically weak, and you make them brain dead, they're easier to control, they're easier to manipulate, and that's something that's been happening for centuries now.
So like, what I'm thinking about, like for example, I made a post on Instagram, I don't know, like maybe a year ago, or less than a year ago, and literally all it was a side-by-side photo. Here's me when I was vegan, and here's me when I'm now eating predominantly fat and protein and from animal products. You know, before and after, and it was like, here was my dietary protocol, here's my movement protocol. Here is my dietary protocol now, here is my movement protocol now. And that was it. Just like boom, boom, fact, fact. And I got over 600 comments of people being like, you know, you're an animal killer, and how can you prioritize your own how can you prioritize your own aesthetics over the life of animals? First of all, I don't prioritize aesthetics. I train for movement quality and strength. I don't give a fuck about the way I look. It just happens that way. But like I got 600 comments of people like literally just attacking me for posting facts. You know, but these are not kings and queens. These are not people that are like twirling their mustache behind the scenes and like, I have a plan to keep people down. These are fucking plebs who can hardly tie their shoes, you know? Like, so what, how do you explain that, you know? Like, why? This is, again, a question for anybody who has insight on this, but I find it baffling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they're not the kings and queens, but their kings and queens, which they're puppets to, and their jokers to, are the corporates. That's their kings and queens. The corporate agenda is the new kings and queens. They own the governments. If you look at the the Heart Association of the United States, it was created by the Adventist Church. The Adventist Church, I can't remember her name right now, but was a woman that had dreams about meat being bad, and her partner wanted to stop boys masturbating and wanted to control them in the church. This is the reason why they started vegetarianism and promoting it, and they became the Heart Health Association. That's a freaking joke. Now, if you look at the FDA and the tie with the FDA with Kellogg's, who was big into depopulation and created the Kellogg's brand to feed stupid people, because he thought everyone else that wasn't at his status or above working class was a freaking stupid slave. So he made Kellogg's cereal, fed on the grain, and even, you might not see it today, but if you look at an old box, you find it online, there's instructions on the back of a cereal box of how to pour freaking cereal into a bowl and eat it. That's how dumb he thought people were, and that's how dumb he wanted to keep people. So these agendas, they go far back. Veganism has been used and is being as a tool with many influencers to impressionate young people and to hit them emotionally in order to malnourish themselves and buy into so many corporate items that do not serve them health-wise, that only serves the pockets of those playing the big monopoly game behind the scenes.
I think there's a lot of sorry to cut you. I think there's a lot of misinformation even with the people that are training to be nutritionists, which are people that the general population is trusting. I mean, when I chose to do my course, I decided not to go through government and I went private because I wanted to do it naturopathically, because I know I wouldn't agree with most of the information that is still being taught to nurses and doctors when they learn about nutrition, which is for about 1 day in their whole 6 year course.
Isn't it like a week out of the 3-year beginner's course?
If they do a week, because my best friend's a medical student and he did 1 day.
Wow.
Yeah, he did 1 day. So they are still learning this old-fashioned, eat your carbs, eat your cereal for breakfast, and that's what most people believe. And if you see advertisement for food, no one is really advertising like eat your vegetables, eat your meat. It's all drink this and eat that, because that's where the money is. No one's paying to advertise whole foods.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these people, these doctors, are also, a lot of their course materials and the universities are being paid by these companies as well, which is quite frightening.
It also goes back to, you know, Ansel Keys? Yeah. So he was like a physician, right, or something?
He's a physician.
And basically, like this was like a very pivotal moment, as I understood it, in the history of after the agricultural revolution in like 1960s. So basically he knew the founder of the American Heart Association, and he went and studied different countries, and he strategically left out the countries that thrived off meat and fat, and then made this study and presented it to the guy, the founder of the American Heart Association, and then they were like, oh yeah, President Nixon, who was the president of the United States, he died of a heart attack. And they were like, basically Ansel Keys, he came to a hypothesis that the president of America died because he had too much cholesterol in his arteries, and that was a result of having a high-fat diet. So then he published low-fat, and then because he knew the founder of the American Heart Association, that became the guideline. It's like everyone should have a low-fat diet, and then all of a sudden, all the processed food starts coming out. All these companies start producing these
And
processed
people get
food.
fucking fat.
And then that's when heart attack, if you look at the numbers over the years, from
Diabetes and heart
1960s,
attack.
straight up.
Autism.
And so like people like my dad, like I tell my dad, like you need to eat more red meat, like because my dad's family, that side of the family has prostate issues, and so the first thing he told me was, go on Google, look, saturated fat's bad, you can't eat it. Look, red meat's bad for prostate.
Google warriors, yeah.
And it's like, this is like what you're talking about, Devin. This is the problem, right? And then you have, to make matters even worse, like I sent you the post the other day, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's definitely not a vegan, promoting veganism now.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like, it's just getting out of hand. It's just getting out of proportion.
Follow the greed.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end. Yeah.
I think we've covered quite a lot without getting too deep on everything. Just got to everything on a good baseline. I mean, thank you all for such great questions. Some really good thought-provoking ones as well. That definitely need to get more on top of as well for when I do future talks, because the vegans aren't so forgiving. But
gonna get quite a few vegan comments on that.
Yeah, we'll see how many post
But you should post that. But really appreciate all of you being here and listening in and participating. It's really been great, and this is what I'm passionate about as well. So being able to communicate this with others and get everyone to just think about what it is that we're being taught, what it is that other people are thinking, and where we've come to as a human animal, and the only animal on the planet that doesn't know what to eat, the only animal on the planet that was made with just one thing, a machine that was made out of one thing. Now this machine needs all these different things in order to work. It's quite mind-blowing. So I'm glad all of you have been open-minded enough to experiment in different things, try different things, find what works for you, and not just listen to the general bullshit that's out there. Yeah, it's you guys that help push forward health and longevity, and others that are still narrowly following just the advice of the first thing that pops up on Google, or some influencer that's making a shit ton of money off of a company. Or, you know, we're all here because we want to move and feel well for as long as possible, and help our clients in our specific fields as well of what we do. So guys, thank you so much. It's been really heartwarming being here. And, to thrive with vitality.
Okay.
Thrive with vitality. It's origins of vitality.
Yeah. So Dom's got a longer 3-hour workshop that's going to come up in a couple of weeks. Which was on the
21st.
On the 21st. So he'll be able to dive more deeply into everything that we kind of discussed today. We've got a couple other workshops happening on the 14th. A bent arm pushing workshop with Devin, which is if you do anything like acro related, you got to get all those guys in there to get it working on that bent arm pushing. And then we'll have these dinner discussions every Wednesday. The topics change every week, but ideally they're very thought-provoking. They're very, in an environment where we want to promote growth, and whatever that might be, right? Human performance, optimization, mind, body, spirit. Create an environment where people can critically think about what's actually happening around their environment, and not just blindly following the masses. Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for coming out. We'll take a really quick group photo. Yeah. Before we head out of here.
Is that a wrap?